The more I learn, the more angrier I get.
News. I look for these little things that, and other reporters should have also picked up on it and go, hey, there's an oddity. Why aren't we talking about it? Hello, everyone.
So can you get us up to date, Crystal, on what the status of the court the court hearings are? Because and answer this if you can. Are they arguing it on the historical tradition aspect of the Second Amendment? Or don't you know? If you don't know, that's fine.
So in the original, he was not allowed. He was admonished by the judge in this case, in his trial, that the Second Amendment, basically the Second Amendment does not exist
in New York. Right.
And so he was not able to use that in his own defense. Now, whatever his attorney is working on as it relates to appeal, I'm not sure. His turn, I can get you his attorney's information as far as I know, but yeah.
Well, an article that I read by Cam Edwards kind of alluded to the fact that they were going to be arguing this on the Bruen case, because this happened before Bruen, and then Bruen came down and said that gun laws must meet historical tradition, and this obviously doesn't meet historical tradition. So it sounded to me like that was their next plan of attack in as far as appeals go. But it sounds like they weren't getting anywhere with New York, and they're going to have to take it to a higher court. She's muted.
Oh, am I muted?
There you go.
Okay.
You're fine now.
Actually, I might go let my dog in, and I might have to reposition this camera, and we can discuss that. But I don't know, what was the question you just asked?
Okay, so I guess, are they going to have to take it to a higher court?
Oh,
is it?
Yes, and he figured that was going to be going to have to happen. He figured that he was going to lose in New York state, and then have to go through the whole appeals process. And he, prepared himself for the fact that he was facing, I believe, 18 years max. And he ended up, they offered him a plea deal for 3.5 years. He refused,
turned it down, right? Yep,
as he should have.
Yep.
And he was sentenced to 10.
And do you know if they're arguing it based on the historical tradition precedent created in the Bruen case? Do you know about that?
Now that I'm not sure of.
Okay.
I'm not sure of all of the logistics and what they're arguing as it relates to his actual, appeals and everything. Okay. All right.
I need to comment on one of the comments real quick.
I'm going to be right back, gentlemen.
Okay. C&T Designs and Arms. You're partially correct. It's actually not in the New York State Constitution. It is in New York State civil rights law. Specifically, it is Article 2, Section 4, New York State civil rights law. And it is almost verbatim exactly what the Second Amendment says, with the exception of, instead of saying shall not be infringed, it says cannot be infringed. And that's the only difference between the way New York State says it in their civil rights law and the way the Second Amendment says it.
Yeah, this case is very upsetting. And I heard about this. Actually, I've been on a podcast with Dexter once before. And I've also seen him talking with Larry Sharp, libertarian, before the trial even started. And I can say this is everyone in America should be aware of this case because it is precedent setting. Having a judge say that the Second Amendment does not apply in the courtroom, that state law supersedes federal law in a courtroom, that should trouble everyone. No matter where any one individual may find the statutes and the what's that word? It creates the
precedents.
Precedent. Thank you. Yep. The precedents that have been started and established in this case are troubling to all of the individual rights of every American everywhere. Because if any court can say this right does not apply in this courtroom, regardless of federal or state law, then what right do you have? That's one of the things that I'm always very troubled about. Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to take a quick pause. Let us go ahead and do the introductions and so forth so everybody knows kind of who we are and what's going on. We kind of jumped over that part. So you want to go ahead and do the intros, Frank?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, Frank Range Report Johnson. In the middle top row is Michael Vasquez, Dragon of New York State, New York's only true independent journalist. To the far right over there is Michael Marshall, co-founder of Liberty First Foundation, of co-host of the show. On the next line is Dal Grimm, our resident wise ass in Czech. In the middle is Crystal Harper. She's here to represent the man of the hour, Dexter Taylor, who will be arriving shortly via phone from, unfortunately, an incarceration cell. On the far side over there is Riding with Charlie Cook. We have a popular show. Matt Mallory from Meet the Pressers is here this evening. And our good friend Dan Watts, author of Good Guy, Bad Gun, and host of the Loaded Mic podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Tonight is going to be a very interesting show that I would like to say is heavy on entertainment, but it's more heavy on heartbreak. If you know the story of Dexter Taylor and the trouble that he's having with the law, you'll understand that it could not only be just him, it could be any of us. And this is a situation we need to call attention to. We all stand with Dexter, and we would like everybody who's watching the show to pay extra close attention to some of the information we're putting out, how you can help, who you can get in touch with, and how you can raise awareness about Dexter's unfortunate and unconstitutional situation. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Crystal, again, thank you so much for coming here and bringing us the story firsthand and for getting us in touch with Dexter. We can't thank you enough for that.
And I appreciate being here and representing my friend Dexter Taylor, who is just an amazing, inspiring man. And unfortunately, I like to say he's being held hostage by the state of New York. He is definitely a political prisoner, and should not be. What happened to him should not have happened to him. And where he is, he should not be. He should be home with his daughter. He should be home with his 80-year-old parents. And he is currently serving a 10-year sentence for what equates to essentially a hobby.
Yeah. Now, if you could give us a brief synopsis on what Dexter's original charges were and what he got convicted for.
Okay. I don't have all the original charges, and I can pull up what he was initially convicted for. But in essence, Dexter Taylor, he's a 30-year software engineer, a veteran of software engineer industry. He's a handsmith. He likes to work with his hands. As he says himself, he's a self-proclaimed nerd. He likes to tinker. And around 2020, he got into 2021, he got into gunsmithing. Not so much for, obviously not for any nefarious purposes. He just wanted to learn how he could make systems better. He wanted to learn all he could about the way guns work, the way guns function, and then eventually go into improving systems to work with police and the military.
Nice.
And so, he got into that. And meanwhile, everyone's favorite alphabet entity was going around to different parts manufacturers, and either by force or by, hey, here it is, giving the list of people who had ordered parts. Now, Dexter ordered these parts in his own name, in his legal name, had them shipped to his home, which is perfectly legal. And meanwhile, again, the ATF was going around to these different parts manufacturers, got his name off of a list. Now, I don't know for sure what list that he found himself on. And And in the wee hours of the morning in 2022, the ATF raided his home. It was a joint effort with the New York State Police. They confiscated all of his weapons that he had built, weapons that he had not fired yet. To be clear, these weapons were not fired until they were confiscated by the police to make sure that they worked. So he had never taken them out of his home. He had never posted about them. He had no intent to sell the firearms, and he was thrown into Rikers for a week. His parents put up their home to get him bail bond out, and he essentially sat in limbo for about 2 years until he went to trial in starting in March of this year. He was convicted in April, sentenced to 10 years. The trial was nothing short of a farce. Again, every time I hear Dexter do an interview, I learn something new. One of his most recent interviews, I learned that American Express, I guess, was the credit card that he used to buy his parts. Not only did they cancel his account, but sent someone to his trial to testify against him.
Wow.
The judge, as we all know, wasn't favorable. But one thing about that is originally Dexter had a white judge and a white prosecutor. New York decided this was not a good look to have this white judge and this white prosecutor go after this black man. And so right before trial started, they switched out his judge with the black woman and the prosecutor with a black man. Did not allow him to, they struck every black male that could have been on the jury. So the jury, as I understand it, consisted mostly of black women and maybe a couple of Jewish men and a Hispanic men or so. I might be getting that makeup wrong, but essentially did everything they could to railroad this man, violated multiple of his rights. Again, convicted him in April. He went to Rikers again for about a month and a half, till he was sentenced in May to the 10 years. And then he went back to Rikers, I believe, for a little while, and now he is in upstate New York.
Well, was he convicted of federal or state charges, or a combination of both?
Again, so I'm pretty sure he can give you better on this.
Okay,
but
well,
what he ultimately was convicted of, essentially what equates to a process crime. New York believes he should have had to go get permits to build these guns. Like they needed that. New York said that he needed their permission to have these firearms in the home, right, even though he had no intent to sell. He wasn't, again, he wasn't flaunting them. He wasn't posting, like he wasn't doing any of that. He just had he was building these things in his home. And
all right, well, from the list of parts that I know that he had ordered, there was nothing in that list that could be described as controlled material. Everything that he ordered was a non-serialized part that is perfectly legal to own, buy, transfer, or anything. So there was nothing in there that you would have said was suspicious by nature. He wasn't buying forced reset triggers, binary triggers, or anything that, would have alluded to say, oh, he's doing something wrong. Everything that he purchased was legal. It was legal for him to purchase it. So the question I always have is, well, why would they focus on him, other than, the fact that he bought several pieces? It seems that it was just kind of weird that they would focus so much of their attention on him and then force a raid on his home. No, go ahead, Vez.
Yeah. I know there was another, I've heard Dexter talk about this a couple of times before he went to the trial. And I know that New York State realized that this is a weak case, that they're going to win because it's New York State. And they did. But it's a weak case because their argument is essentially the sum of the parts is the crime. That literally you have And you could use this same argument against anyone in America. The sum of the items you have to clean your cleaning products in your bathroom, in your kitchen, in your house, that could make plastique. Therefore, you are in violation of making plastique. You're a criminal because the sum of the parts is the problem. This is why New York State tried, and I know Dexter has mentioned it previously publicly, that they did try to plea bargain this case to get him to accept that he was guilty for a lesser charge. And he said no, because they are wrong in this presupposition that you're guilty because the state says, because the state said so, because the state was looking for a target. And my own supposition on that, to answer your question, Frank, why did they do this? Same reason why they do red flag laws. They were looking for the media attention. Yeah. They were looking for this to be, they come in the middle of the night. They make sure the press is aware of it. They target someone, a black man in Brooklyn. They had no reason. No one was in danger. No one complained. Every part was legal. Everything was paid for. But because they didn't like it, they wanted to have the press go, black man with a gun in Brooklyn. Oh, we're doing our job. Therefore, you should comply. He was the example, in my opinion.
Well, it's also a matter of sending the message. Dexter is a man who's never had any criminal history. He's been an upstanding citizen his entire life. And if they can go after a guy like that, they can go after anybody. Dan Wass, what's your take on any of this? Do you have any questions you want to talk to Crystal, ask Crystal about?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let's introduce the other members of our panel because we kind of got we stopped at Crystal. Tonight we also have Charlie Cook from Riding Shotgun with Charlie is on the show tonight. Dan Wass, who is an author,
host of Loaded Mike,
and host of the Loaded Mike, and Matt Mallory, who is from Meet the Pressers. Will be joining us on this discussion tonight. We got a lot of people tonight with us, so it should be a great show.
And just to piggyback real quick, and to your point, the feds knew that it was weak too. That's why first of all, they knew they couldn't get him on anything because he didn't do anything federally wrong. So that's why they passed it over to New York to let them prosecute him.
Yeah, essentially the process crime he's guilty of is not serializing his barrels and his receivers. That's it. The parts were correct. Everything was above board. The only thing he didn't do was stamp the barrel or the receiver with a serial number and register them with the state. And as far as I can tell, there really is nothing that requires that unless you have an intent to sell.
No, barrels don't need to be serialized. Only the receiver needs to be serialized.
Right. So,
and that's if you're manufacturing with the intent to sell. That's not the case if you were doing it for private possession. Dan, jump in on here.
Well, I think from what I have, the little bit of research that I did, it was a New York law, the New York ban on so-called ghost guns, which is ridiculous. But so I think this is based on New York law because and New York law has been getting turned over left and right. I mean, you know, it's just it's unbelievable. They create all the Matt knows this. I mean, Matt and I have talked about this before. New York is getting the hell beat out of them because of these horrible unconstitutional gun laws that they're trying to pass. Started, you know, with all the stuff in the CCIA. Much of that has been deemed unconstitutional, and not only that, but unenforceable. Judges have come out and said you cannot enforce these laws. You know, and so this is just going to be another one of those things. This is a violation of the Second Amendment right, and from what I understand. Maybe when Dexter comes on, he'll be able to explain it better to us. But from what I understand, this happened before the Bruin case, and then the Bruin case was decided, and Judge Clarence Thomas wrote his decision or his opinion, and he included that historical tradition piece, which is so important. So now, my guess is that if they can get this to a higher court, that they will argue it on Second Amendment grounds based on the silly New York ghost gun ban doesn't meet historical tradition. And I think it's a slam dunk. But the problem in New York is they will drag this stuff out and keep people in jail as long as they can just to be spiteful. They hate the Second Amendment in New York.
No, if I may, Dan,
Sure.
tell me if I'm misunderstanding this, because you touched on something. I think it's important. One of the comments early on so far is from Grace that CBS did cover this on Monday and Monday night. And they were spinning this as if, well, this is about ghost guns. Ghost guns are absolutely dangerous. And so this was to protect the public. Now, something I want to address on that, tell me if I'm wrong here, Dan, because I know you follow the law. I follow a lot of us do. They didn't know there was a ghost gun. When they entered into the home, all they were aware of, and we can ask this of Dexter, of course, to double check, but all they knew is he had gun parts. They didn't know he had assembled anything. They didn't know what he assembled. They had no way of knowing there is a ghost gun until after the fact. So to charge him after they have already violated his home, after they violated his rights, that's their excuse. That's their cover up. And we're not supposed to notice, you violated his rights and then came up with the charge, which is a violation of the Eighth Amendment.
Could be.
The warrant
I don't
should
know.
have never been issued.
Yeah. Well, under New York law, under New York red flag laws, all you have to do is get a judge to sign off on a extreme risk protection order, and that may have been what they did. I don't know for sure, but that's all that's got to happen. Then you can come in and confiscate whatever you want. New York is awful, and New York red flag laws are so vague that you can have practically anybody accuse you of anything and anonymously. It's crazy. So this is all bad. It's all from the red flag law to the unserialized parts. It's all everything that they're accusing him of is they're taking unconstitutional action here. And I hope he's got a good lawyer, because it looks like a slam dunk to me if he can get it to the right judge.
And to your point, again, they try to paint him as a danger to his neighbors,
right?
A danger to his daughter.
Yeah, that's red flag.
And the danger to, like, if someone got it's just egregious. There's no other better word. It's just egregious. What happened to him?
My guess is that they had to say those things so it would qualify under the extreme risk protection order or red flag laws.
Yeah. Right. Matt was trying to.
And he had built the guns prior to, I believe, that ghost gun law. So they had already been built by the time they passed that law.
Well, and I guess a couple things here coming from the law enforcement perspective. They're there to gather evidence. So you have a Fourth Amendment right to search and seizure if you don't give up that right? So unless they have a warrant, then, but now we've got New York with the red flag, which is, obviously due process is out the window. It's one person arbitrarily saying that this person can now have all of their rights stripped. You're not facing your accuser. You don't have the process of speedy trial. You don't have your, you don't have, there's so many rights that they're taking away with ERPO and red flag or emergency risk protection order. And our governor in New York State just doubled down. I think it was last week or the week before, where they even went with harder and deeper red flag ERPO. So it's getting worse and worse here in New York State. So this case is pivotal when it comes to going up to the higher court. So anybody watching or listening out there absolutely needs to help with the GoFundMe. Give, Send, Go, I think was the link, as well as any organizations that are getting on board or fighting against New York State or other commie states. We're behind enemy lines here, and the only way to actually get stuff like this never to happen is teach these government agencies that they're overstepping.
And not to go on a tangent, but that actually ties in with Prop 1 that comes out in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
And Prop 1, for those that don't know, is also called the ERA, and it's the Equality Rights Act, I believe is the terminology they use. But essentially what it does is it makes it illegal by New York State's determination to criticize protected status, right? And they define what is protected status, and the protected status is identity politics, straight up.
Absolutely.
So that ties in with the remnants of the red flag laws that haven't been struck down here in New York State. So ostensibly, This show could be shut down by the Department of Hate Speech out of Albany because we're criticizing the narrative. And if we try to speak out about the injustices that were done to Dexter Taylor and to many others that both in the future and current, we're going to be stuck. Like there is going to be no dissent in this country because in the state because you're not going to be allowed to hear it.
Well, even under the CCA Concealed Carry Improvement Act that went into effect in September of 2022, they voted for it in July. Literally one of the last things under sensitive and restricted locations, they're saying you cannot exercise your First Amendment right. You cannot protest while you're exercising your Second Amendment right. So you cannot be armed while you're exercising your First Amendment right and protest. I mean, that literally they wrote that into the law. That I haven't even seen that be, subject to scrutiny up through the courts yet. That should get thrown out right there. I mean, it's like they don't coexist. those two First and Second Amendment can't coexist. Come on.
Yeah, your rights don't cancel it out because you want to exercise both of them.
No, sure. and the kicker is this. And the kicker is that the state itself is in violation of its own constitutional law under the civil rights law. Yep. As Marshall was mentioning earlier, it's Article 4, Section 4, or Article 2, Section 4. Sorry, and it clearly states that you have the right to bear arms, and it cannot be infringed. That it just can't. So they not only threw the Second Amendment from the national Constitution, the federal Constitution out the window, they're throwing the whole playbook out for the state as well. This is not. We are not living in a democracy. We're living in New York, which is an empire of Albany.
The judge in the case was quoted as saying, "Do not bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. It does not exist here."
So that was this case. I remember hearing that. I wasn't sure
that was this case.
That was this case. Mm-hmm.
The judge was quoted as saying that if that's not immediate grounds for a mistrial or an appeal, I don't know what is. So why the wheels are taking so long to have him at least released? You want to try him, try him. You want to try him, gin up these bogus charges in front of a legitimate jury, then go ahead and try it. But for God's sake, get the man out of there. I don't know why the process is keeping him locked up. The man's not a flight risk. He's not a danger to the community. They're letting potential murderers and muggers and rapists out of the jails in New York State, in New York City, all over the place. Well, and this guy is sitting in jail.
And by the way, that judge is married to, I believe, one of the biggest donors, political donors.
Shocking. Really?
So there's a lot of interesting
donors to Kathy Hochul or to the
I believe the Democratic Party in general, or specifically I had heard something else about, but she's married to a top donor.
I like to call her Karen Hochul.
Yeah. One other thing I want to bring up real quick, for those who are relying on, I know a lot of people put a lot of authority bias on things like CBS because, they're the mainstream news media. And I see the comment from Grace. We'll get that one second. I just want to point out something. Here's a question that I'm a member of the press, just like CBS. Okay. And any member of the press should have asked a very simple question. This is from CBS. This is the video of when they went in to Dexter's home, when they took him by force. Why are members of immigration there? The ICE, Immigrations Customs Enforcement, ICE, ICE, have nothing to do with the ATF. They have nothing to do with New York State. They have nothing to do with an individual who owns property in their home. And they have, even if you want to go with red flag law, they have no right to do that. Why are they
have nothing
there?
to do with firearms at all?
Nothing whatsoever. So
maybe they were measuring the space to figure out where they could put some more illegals.
Yeah. My point in this is these what we've just said, and the fact that I'm bringing this up to you, the news media, which is supposed to be protecting your rights, the ones who are supposed to be helping you out, they should have asked that question. CBS never did. Whose side are they on? But I think that's the call.
Yep. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
5x5.
Excellent. I can hear you.
All right, who are we speaking with?
Beautiful. Yeah, you're fine, bye. My name is Dexter Taylor, a.k.a. Carbon Mike.
Dexter, it's a pleasure to meet your acquaintance on the phone, unfortunately, through such horrible circumstances. We're here live on the show. We're live on the show. Crystal is with us. We've got a number of other people on the show with us that are going to share your story on their podcasts as well. We wanted to say, first of all, I want to say, first of all, God bless you. Hold strong, and we're very sorry that you're having to go through this, but you are probably going to wind up being the man who sets the precedent for freedom in this case. So that's a lot of weight on your shoulders, and unfortunately, you have to bear the burden. But we're going to be here to try and help you lift the weight.
Hey, Dexter, it's Mike Marshall.
Thank you, brother. God bless you as well.
Hey, Dexter, it's Mike Marshall. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, thank you. Thank you guys for taking an interest, really. It's great. And by the way, can Crystal hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hey, Crystal, how's it going, my dear?
It's going great. Lego man, how are you? It's so
Lego
awesome.
It's
awesome to hear your voice, man. I'm damn near in tears over here.
It's great to hear your voice too, man. It's been a minute. It's been a minute.
Yeah, just a little bit.
All right. All right. Listen, Dexter, I don't know how much time they're going to give you on the phone tonight. We want to cover a few different things for you. We have Charlie Cook from Writing with Charlie on the program. He's a very popular podcast. We have Dan Wass from The Smoking Gun. And we also have Matt Mallory from Meet the Pressers. These guys have got a pretty wide audience. I'm sure they're eager to ask you a couple of questions. We're going to try and keep everything a little short just so we get as much information out in a short period of time as possible. One of you guys raise your hand. Let me know who's got a question for Dexter or a comment or what they need to know. Charlie, we're going to start off with Charlie Cook. Charlie, go ahead and you talk to Dexter.
All right. Thank you very much, Dexter.
Let me interrupt 1 second. I'm very sorry. I just want to let you guys know that there is a limit to how long a single phone call can be, but we are certainly free to terminate the call when we get the 1 minute warning and call you back if we have any unfinished business. It's perfectly fine. So effectively we have as much time as we need. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, that's great. We'll work on that. All right. So Charlie Cook's got a question for you. So Charlie, jump on.
All right. I'm going to start with the easy ones. First of all, thanks for taking the time, Dexter. I don't know all the gun laws in New York. I know they're bad. I live in Massachusetts. I get it. We're close. You have to have a license in order to possess everything, correct? Like in order to possess a firearm, not to carry it.
That is correct. In order to possess a firearm, not only do you have to have a license, but you have to, for every firearm you buy, like for example, let's say you do all your paperwork and what have you, then for every additional firearm you buy, right, you have to go and ask New York for permission. May I buy this firearm? And then you go through the normal process that we're familiar with the NICS check and the FFLs and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay.
So
and
that's just for New York City. The rest of New York State, if it's a long gun, you can buy it just going through the NICS check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That sounds right. That it's yeah.
Now that's for purchasing the firearm.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. And then a quick follow up. Do you have a permit in New York? Like I don't want to. I'm sure that's part of what the issue is. Like you don't have a permit for these, and you're building them, and you're getting all the parts, and they're keeping track of all your purchases and the Amex and everything else.
Well, exactly. I mean, and my answer to a permit is yes, I do have a permit. Yeah, the problem is that New York State does not recognize my permit. My permit is called the Second Amendment to the Constitution. That's my permit, right? And so, in terms of asking the state for permission, the fact is that what the Second Amendment protects, not grants, but protects, is a right, not a privilege. If you have to ask the state for permission to do something, then you don't have a right to do that thing. That is a privilege that's being granted, and it can be revoked anytime. And I simply don't recognize that trade of giving away your rights and getting privileges in return. So that's the only permit I recognize, and that's how that goes.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, I think all of us on the channel can pretty much say that we're in agreement with that statement.
Correct.
As far as the Second Amendment is concerned.
Yeah. Can I?
Go ahead, Dan Lash, jump in.
Hey, Dexter, thanks for fighting this fight for us. We're cheering you on over here. I'm in New York too, and I know the gun laws are just totally unreasonable. You are absolutely right, and I like I said, I'm cheering you on for fighting the Second Amendment is our gun permit, because the idea that the laws that New York State is putting in place right now, especially with the CCIA, we were talking before you came on, and they're getting shot down on all this stuff. The laws are getting kicked back,
Correct.
you know, on a lot of the CCIA stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with. So I cheer you on for this. I just have a couple quick questions. This happened before Bruin, correct? Before the Bruin?
Before, I believe.
I think it
That's
did.
a good question. I believe I think it did. I think I was rated before the Bruin decision came down. Yes.
It's 2022.
June 23rd, 2022 was
So
the Bruin decision.
when the Bruin case came down,
Right, and I was rated in April. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
when the Bruin case came down, Judge Clarence Thomas said in his opinion that gun laws must meet historical tradition. Is that what you guys are arguing this on? The Second Amendment that serialization does not meet historical tradition? Is that the main argument?
Well, serialization is one of the kind of the I want to say fake ginned up issues that New York State has taken with me. The other is just possessing firearms, having manufactured them to begin with. But yeah, it's that the laws of New York State do not meet that test, right? They don't. Remember, it was a two-step test that Justice Thomas laid down in his decision, right? One was the plain text of the Second Amendment, and the second was the history and tradition of the United States, right?
Yes.
With respect to firearms laws. So, we can have arguments about, permitting, concealed carry, open carry, shall issue, may issue, all those, we can have those arguments. Excuse me. But there really can be no argument that, above all, the Second Amendment means that you have a right to keep and bear arms inside your house as a peaceable, law-abiding citizen, right? If we don't have the right to do that, then the Second Amendment is a dead letter. That's as simple as I can put it. So yeah, we're arguing. So serialization is part of it, but the broader issue is the fact that I certainly have a right as a person with a squeaky clean record, to purchase legal parts online, ship them to my house under my own name, and manufacture firearms.
You know what I was thinking. If you, when you are successful with this, you're going to turn the New York State permit system on its head, and I will be dancing in the streets, celebrating because that's what it sounds like you're heading for, and I anything I can do to help you. I write for AmmoLand, so I'll be glad to do some articles on this and stuff like that if you want.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The more the merrier. Thank you. A word about the permitting system, which I think you'll find amusing, is that, in my trial, among the witnesses that were called to testify against me, the police witnesses, there was one gentleman who worked in the NYPD permitting department. Now, for some background, the permitting department has kind of always been, the brokenness of that particular department has always been kind of a big open secret. There have been a number of public scandals about the permitting department. Some police officers were actually indicted and tried for essentially taking bribes. People have known in New York City for a long time that the only really reliable way that you can get permission to carry is if you know someone, if you've got influence, you've got money. And these guys were taking money and taking gifts and what have you to expedite permits. Now, that aside, the gentleman who testified against me from the permitting department his testimony really showed how, what a farce this whole thing is. So, and my, and by the way, this is all in the transcript, so you don't have to take my word for it. But my attorney asked me, so what's your job in the permitting process? Well, I own the records in permitting. That's my job. So my attorney says, well, okay, how many people applied for permits in 2024? 2022. That was. No, I'm sorry, 2024, because my trial was this year. How many people applied for permits in 2024? I don't know. What? But I thought you said you own the records. And then, from the judge, objection. He's already answered the question. Right? And so, every time my attorney kind of backed the guy into a corner where it was shown that he really was his job was kind of arbitrary and ridiculous, and he didn't even know his job all that well, the judge would raise an objection and force my attorney to discontinue that line of questioning. That gives you some idea of what's going on there. And I've been going on for. I'll just add that I wrote the software that my legal team used to analyze the data from the NYPD. We had to issue a FOIA request to get that data in the first place. When we got it, it was in a raw form, and I wrote the software package to kind of crunch that data and ingest it into a database in a form where it was very easy for us to find out, how many people were applying for permits in a given year, how many were rejected, how many were accepted, so on and so forth. And that's open source software, by the way. That's up on my GitHub account. But yeah, that's it's one of many things, many respects in which New York is way out of line.
All right, Dexter, this is Michael Voss, and you probably don't recall, back before you got to trial, we actually met in a podcast before, and we were speaking. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person as soon as possible. But I wanted to ask you a question about the circumstance that you find yourself in, because I've heard you speak about this. I've seen you on with Larry Sharp a couple of times. I've seen you speaking about this, and we were talking about it just before you came on. I want to be very clear. What was the initiating cause that made New York State take action? Because you broke no laws. Everything was done by the books, paid for in your name. No one had a complaint against you about any physical violation. So what was their justification to come to your home?
That's an excellent question. The justification was surveillance. That was it. In other words, the ATF has been doing this for a while. I want to point out to the people who don't know that ATF more or less drove the search warrants in this case. So, and ATF has been doing that again around the country. What they will do is they will do one of two things, or perhaps both things. They'll go to parts manufacturers, right, such as the people I was buying parts from, and say, give us your customer list or else. And then they'll go to a friendly, and for those manufacturers which comply, because they don't want to get raided into bankruptcy, ATF will go around to friendly jurisdictions like New York, friendly to the ATF, not friendly to the Second Amendment, and say, hey, this guy's been buying parts. That, and they've been going around looking at people's credit card records, saying, hey, we want to see this person's credit card records. Oh, this person has been spending a lot of money on this and that and thus and so. We think they're buying gun parts, so go get him. So essentially spying. That's what drove the initial action against me is government spying. There's no better term for that.
Okay. So to be clear, so there's no person who complained, so red flag laws do not apply.
Correct.
No law, no violation of
Correct.
the law existed because you did everything by the book. And the only thing, they entered into your home with agents of ICE, which is immigration, as well as members of the federal government and state government. They entered your home without cause. And because you assembled a product your property in a certain configuration, they then said, well, after the fact, you made a crime. Am I understanding that right?
That's more or less correct, except that it wasn't ICE, it was ATF. But yes, it was ATF and New York, what they call ESU, which is what NYPD calls their SWAT. There were a couple of people in my apartment with ATF windbreakers on, so that's how I knew ATF was there on the day. But yes, that's exactly correct. This person bought something, and again, not having known what I manufactured or what I manufactured anything, because remember, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't show anyone, like outside of my house. I didn't brag about it on social media. I didn't advertise. I didn't sell. I didn't transfer. I didn't even any desire or any urge to sell or transfer anything that I manufactured. So yes, you're exactly right. So okay, this guy's buying stuff, and we assume he's manufacturing those things into a configuration that we don't like, so we're going to break his door down. And oh yes, we have, and there are firearms, and so we're going to lock the guy up. That's you have it pretty much correct.
Okay, I know others want to say something. We have it on the screen right now. You can't see this at the moment, Dexter, but CBS showed video of when they came into your home, and they do have immigration agents, at least the windbreakers, identifying themselves as immigration agents. So again, it goes to the confusion.
Really?
Yes, it's on from CBS News. We have it. It's been published by them. So
again, Axiom body camera.
Yeah. So it goes to the confusion of
wow.
So it's why there's so much confusion. Go ahead.
Oh no! Wait a second. Hold on. Wait. No. Hold on. I got to clarify the record here. What you're looking at, Vasquez, I'm looking at the same photo right there. What you're looking right there is a New York City Police Department slicker. It's a jacket. It's an 8-button jacket that goes in the front. It's a raincoat.
Police.
It's split in. It's just POL on one side, ICE on the other.
Yes.
Okay, Ben.
All right, Chris, in the interest of, listen, if we're going to bring the facts out to people, we have to be 100% accurate, because anything that we say, you know that the Young Turks are going to come pick it up and say, look, they're lying about the case. So
I understand, but that's why we cited the photo and we brought it up and asked for everyone to be clear.
Right.
So
I didn't see. I didn't see any ICE windbreakers, but I did see again 2 people. A man and a woman wearing ATF windbreakers. Right. And what people should also know, who don't already know about this case, is that I caught no federal heat from this case. Right? I mean, the feds were there to drive the search warrant, and then they said goodbye. Right? So this is entirely a state case. This is New York State running wild. Right? Not the feds. And all of us know how the ATF gets down. So if there's been something irregular, or if I've been doing something that was even questionable, they would have pounced on that. So, this is what we're dealing with. And, I'm curious to hear the other folks' questions, but I just want to point out that one of the things that Crystal knows, because she's been listening to my content, even before I went inside and before my trial started, is that, many of our conservative brethren, have a bad habit of acting as if the things that happen in cities don't matter, as if it's just something to be expected. What did you expect? Why do you live in New York? Why don't you just move? But the fact is that in this case, our adversaries, right, and we happen to be adversaries of liberty and the adversaries of the Second Amendment, of the rights guaranteed by the Second Amendment, our adversaries are saying the quiet part out loud. This is what they want to do everywhere.
Yeah.
To everyone. And so we have to fight them everywhere in order for our rights and the rights of our children and their children to be secure anywhere. So I'll pause there. Yeah.
Right. Dexter, Matt Mallory from Meet the Pressers is up. He's got a couple of questions he'd like to ask you.
Hey, Dexter. Nice to meet you. So I'm in upstate New York in Syracuse. I know you're upstate. I'm sorry for what you're going through. A couple questions that I had is, one, how did they gain entry? Did they have a warrant? Did they do it based on exigent circumstances? Did you let them in because most people that are innocent and really don't have anything to hide, law enforcement will use that as a tactic. Hey, you don't have anything to hide. You don't mind us taking a look. And that's the way law enforcement will get people to give up their Fourth Amendment rights. So that's my first of two questions.
Yeah. Oh no, they breached the door. They didn't knock. They didn't do it like they broke in the front door. Or pick the lock, or however they compromised the front door, and they broke in the inner door. That's what. And yes, they had a search warrant, which they were kind enough to show me. Right. Once they had me in handcuffs. But yeah, they didn't. No one knocked. And somebody didn't get a phone call or anything like that beforehand. I know you got a second question, but on the back of that first question, I just want to point out to the people who are listening that this is where. This is where a lot of the excuse making really breaks down, because you see a lot of people will say, "Whoa, you had firearms, you had gunpowder, you were doing this, you were doing that," and isn't it normal for them to assume that you were going to do something wrong or you were planning to do something wrong? You say, "Okay, well, New York State has vast investigative powers. I mean, they can sign a sheet of paper, and some of the biggest companies in the world will give up the records. That's what happened with Google, because they subpoenaed my email records, no problem, right? American Express canceled my account after I was indicted, long before I was tried. That's right. So New York State has a lot of ability to go and say, hey, we want to find out more about this guy. And putting aside issues of privacy, if this is really about public safety, and if they really were concerned that, hey, maybe this guy wants to shoot up the place, maybe he has a terrorist manifesto, maybe there's any number of things they could have done to put their minds at rest. They could have found out very easily, for example, that I'm a licensed amateur radio operator. I'm on the Part 97 website. You can look me up. I was a member in good standing of my local gun range. I passed a criminal background check at my local gun range to become a member. I've lived in Brooklyn for the past 30 years or so, right? I'm very stable as far as location. I'm not a drifter. And, of course, I have a squeaky clean criminal record. And in terms of my conservative politics, the stuff I've been posting online since about 2015, you can just go and listen to where I'm coming from as a human being, as a citizen, as an American, and know that, okay, this guy does not, it's not plausible that to look at it on its face and say this guy poses a threat to civic order or to public safety. So this was not about public safety. It was not about civic order. It's about political control. So I'll pause there. I want to get to the next question.
No, that's all good content. And I think too, this is another good example of lawfare where, if they want to get you, they'll get you. They don't care. And like I said, being a law enforcement officer in New York, there's literally so many laws that could be used to get somebody if that officer or that agency wants to. And it's put it this way. Every single person in New York State is breaking the law. I mean, there's so much law that there's no way for everybody to be compliant with every single law that's out there. So you could be pulled over for a multitude of things, and most officers will just let you go as long as you're not a heinous person. They won't even give you a ticket. But on to my second question. The judge, they changed judges. And then the new judge literally said the Second Amendment doesn't exist in my courtroom. That right there should be on appeal. You should win that just hands down. If that's not prejudice, if that's not totally a one side of this, I mean, it's a Second Amendment case, period. So by that judge saying that alone, the appeals court should just be like, well, that judge is prejudiced. Yep, we gotta throw this case out or retry it at minimum.
Well, there's some. I see what you mean. I want to delve into that with you a little bit, but I can look at my timer and see that in the next couple of minutes they're going to give me the 1 minute warning. So what I'd like to do is just terminate this call now and call you guys right back, and I can tackle that question of the judge. Hey, how she was elected, what that process was, and then that, and maybe some other irregularities in my trial that people might be interested in. So shall we do that?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll be back on in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thanks, Crystal. All right.
Hey guys, I gotta run. But I got a dance class I gotta get to.
He's
You
learning.
can call
the
it training.
Macarena.
It's fine.
It was good seeing everybody.
Seeing
And
you,
Nice meeting you.
I'll make sure I get share this video and stuff. But thanks for the invite, Frank.
Always.
Thanks,
Always
Dan.
welcome, brother.
We'll see you
Always
guys
good seeing you
later.
again.
Thanks.
Take
And bye,
care.
Crystal.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Enjoy your Macarena.
While we wait for Dexter to come back, let's make sure everyone is aware who is watching this. Please like this. Please share this. Please leave a comment both during the live chat and in the comments, wherever platform that you're watching it on, no matter whose channel you're watching it on, because that helps to make sure that certain internet giants don't get to bury this story, because we're using the system against them. If you like this, if you share this, if you leave a comment during the chat and afterwards, then it's harder for them to bury this story, which is what they've been trying to do. It makes it harder for them to hide this from the public and say, oh, none of that's true. You didn't hear that. You're hearing it from the horse's mouth. You're hearing it from Dexter himself. You're seeing the questions that no one else wants to talk to you about, that they don't, mainstream does not want to address this. They just want you to obey.
Yep.
You gotta help us to make sure it's not going to be you next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got to get this out everywhere, every place that we can get this story out. We need to literally force it so that it cannot be buried, so it cannot be hidden from public view. What's going on here is an egregious assault on our rights. Okay. And if they're doing it to Dexter Taylor, they can do it to any one of us.
Yeah. Did he clarify whether it was a federal or a state warrant that they
It's
issued?
state.
In entry?
It's also, actually, it's not even state. It's New York City.
Oh, okay.
All right. I believe we have Dexter back on with us now.
Yes, sir.
There he is.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm really getting the hang of this
Right.
Wi-Fi telephone thing in Gizmo in my switchboard. I'm getting it working. I don't believe it. Well, Dexter, you don't know how much hair I pulled out of my head trying to make sure I had this audio working right to get you on here tonight, Dexter. You're a test case.
I'm glad you did that.
You're a test case in all subjects.
That's excellent. I think the air was a worthy sacrifice. I'm very grateful to you for making this happen. Really. So on to the question of the judge in my case, and her statement was, I think a more precise quote would be, the Second Amendment has no place in this courtroom.
Yeah.
And look, as a technical matter, right? It's certainly true that at the trial court level, right? What's supposed to be considered, what is placed before the jury for consideration is, did this person break the law as currently written, right? The question, so, to the extent, right, that you could say, well, the question at the trial court level is not whether the law is constitutional, but whether I broke the New York State's law on paper, right? That's one thing.
Nope.
Oh, did we lose him?
Sounds like it.
All right, we may have lost him for a moment. I'm sure Frank's frantically trying to get him reconnected here.
But to point out in the same in the same vein as this, they're not just breaking the constitutionality of the federal Constitution when they dismiss the Second Amendment outright. They're also violating New York State law that enshrines the Second Amendment in New York State's own Constitution. So even if you were to break the law, even if you were breaking a piece of legislation, like a legal piece of legislation, it still is in violation of the New York State Constitution, which is the law as written.
Yeah.
So that judge is completely out of line. She should have been
Very out of line.
benched completely because she's not following the law as written.
You back, Dexter?
Go ahead, Dexter.
Well, here's the funny thing. Can you hear me, gentlemen?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you now. Yep.
You can hear me. Okay. So yes. Here's the funny thing about that, right? They even, she tried to prevent me with varying degrees of success from saying anything about the Second Amendment. So, for example, you all probably know that I took the stand in my own defense.
Right.
Okay. So when the ADA asked me if I had a permit, I said, yes, I have a permit. It's called the Second Amendment. Objection. Right. And this time, for a change, it was the ADA making the objection rather than the judge. But the judge herself made quite a few objections in this case. I found that odd, but that aside, the ADA objected to that, and at one point they tried to get me to change my answer. She admonished me, and I said, look, if you want to hear that answer, then I don't know how to answer the question, right? Because they said, well, forget about the Second Amendment. What I mean is that did you have a permit that was dated? Yes, my permit was dated at the founding of this country. When did your permit take effect? October
1791.
Year of our Lord, 1990. Well, my permit was October 8th, 1970. That's when I drew my first step as an American citizen. Right? Again, objection, we can't have that. So you see, and I knew enough to know that, yes, there are some things that can get you busted for contempt of court. But answering the question in the way that you want to answer it, is not one of them. But no, that's my answer. That's my answer. And yes, you didn't want to hear anything about the Second Amendment, which is a different thing. That's a very different thing from saying that the jury may not consider the Second Amendment. She didn't even want my answers to be on the record. You see what I'm saying? So that's, and again, that's one of many, I've been going on for a bit now, but that's one of many irregularities in my trial.
Well, and to that, just so people understand out there, if she doesn't allow that to be heard by the jury, it doesn't get typed up by the stenographer, then when you appeal and it goes to the appeals court bases their ruling off of the actual the text from the stenographer. So if that's not in there, then they may not approve your appeal or reverse it because of that.
Well, thankfully, I'm glad you mentioned that, and thankfully, my lawyer did the right thing, which was to move to dismiss the case on Second Amendment grounds. Period. So, because we both looked at that thing that says, you can't argue, you can't use something in your appeal that wasn't brought up, that wasn't discussed in the court. But the Second Amendment was brought up because we moved for summary dismissal on Second Amendment grounds, on Bruin grounds to begin with. Of course, we knew that would be denied, but that is on the record as well, right? So we've got our ducks in a row, thank God. To take this appeal forward, But yeah, there were a lot of irregularities. Again, the judge lodging an awful lot of exceptions. I'm used to hearing, either the prosecution or the defense, raise objections, but for the judge to raise them, as often as she did, I thought that was kind of odd. I thought it was odd that she interrupted my lawyer's opening statement.
Yeah.
Multiple times. And when I say interrupted, I don't mean stop, you said something that's out of order. I mean stop everything. Everyone gets up and goes to the back, both sides, lawyers from both sides go into the back room, where none of us can hear them. And then they come out and take the positions, and my lawyer starts again with no admonition and no acknowledgement that anything happened. That happened maybe half a dozen times during his opening statement. Right? That's odd to me. And then, the something that my lawyer pointed out to me, because I didn't know enough at the time to kind of notice this, but the idea of rehabilitating, we're trying to rehabilitate biased potential jurors. So during the voir dire process, during the jury selection process, there were several people who got up and when they were questioned, when my attorney questioned them, for example, even when the prosecution questioned them, they stated very strong anti-gun opinions, very strong. And so she would regularly refuse to strike them, right? So we had to use up the allocation of strikes that we had to get rid of people who obviously thought that everyone who buys a gun or makes a gun should be thrown into the ocean, right? And then again, the rehabilitation, the idea that she would then talk to this person who said, "Yeah, I just hate guns and I hate people," the person said, and she would say, "Well, yeah, despite your opinion, do you think you can still render a fair verdict?" Of course, they would say yes, because that people want to be involved in the process.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you can't hear someone say something that's so biased, and then just say, "Well, I'm going to ask them if they're really biased or if they can be fair." And if they say yes, then we'll assume that they can be fair. She's rehabilitating potential jurors. And my lawyer brought it up, and of course, she wrote over his objection, but at least that was on the record that even in the jury selection process, there were a lot of irregularities. And finally, I'd say we should not be surprised in any of this, because I'm given to understand that she's married to the Brooklyn DA's top fundraiser. So this judge who was swapped into our case at the last minute, who conducted herself as if she had clear orders to get a certain outcome,
of course,
is of course connected to one side and was there to act more or less, it seems to me, as a third prosecutor.
It's lawfare. It's 1,000% lawfare. I just got to say, Dexter, and I'll let somebody else ask questions, but the last thing, not if, but when you get out of jail, I'm looking for a gunsmith. So if you want to move to upstate New York, you've got really good experience at it. So I'll throw that out there.
Hey, thanks,
maybe
brother.
maybe open a
I don't know if
school.
we'll have time, but I do want to. Pardon me?
I said maybe open a school. Arizona's got the Sonoran Desert Institute. Why not do the New York equivalent? If we can overturn overturn this, get New York free again, and start a school. My son wants to learn.
Yes, you know what's funny? What's very funny about that is that one of the, and I hope we'll have time to talk about it tonight. But once I got interested in building firearms, especially when I started building rifles, AR rifles, I got really interested in weapon science and in the kind of the technical problems involved in, for example, the reliable operation of gas-operated semi-automatic rifles. And so there were a few things that I developed. I developed a theoretical, or I began developing and had notes on a theoretical framework for tuning gas-operated semi-automatics. It's called cyclic energy flow. We can talk about that if you like.
Nice.
I wanted to develop a product called EMBER, which is electronic measurement of barrel resonance, because of course barrel resonance is also a problem. Yeah. And if you can measure it using dirt cheap sensors and software, then all of a sudden, everyone from sport shooters to like U.S. Army sniper teams, right, can get the benefit of that, right? Can tune their weapons more easily. I began to prototype something called Osiris, Open Shot Registration System. This is actually a way to use wearable electronics to register shot reports. So that you can kind of pass data to Mantis or whatever product you're using. And then I was developing something called Drip 360, which is a dry-fire integrated training system. The idea is to use smart components inside a standard Glock or a standard AR, so that you could rig an indoor shooting range with a PA system, and you could literally make dry-fire training more realistic by generating shot reports when the firing pin hits your snap cap or what have you. So all these things. It's like I wasn't just hoarding guns, as they say, or what have you. It's like I really thought and still do think that I have something to offer the firearms industry.
Yeah.
And people who've heard me talk, I'm always talking about Bill Geisley. He's one of my heroes, right? From Guys Who Automatic, who got his first contract building triggers for the U.S. Army sharpshooting team. And I'm like, I thought it was just the coolest thing in the world that I could use my existing 30-something years of experience as a software developer and my experience as a kind of a shade tree mechanic in this new field of new to me anyway, field of weapons science, to make products that are useful. I was designing a system for hand loaders to where people who load their own ammunition could have a cheap desktop scanner, right, to detect defects in brass that, middle-aged eyes might not be able to detect. That's useful, right?
Wow.
Knowing what ammunition is and knowing how important flawless brass is. And of course, the big manufacturers use laser scanners for their brass, but I was thinking, can I build something that's cheap enough and small enough to fit on a desktop, right? And you can just dump your brass into a hopper and the thing can scan your brass for you. So I wasn't just messing around with weapons. I wasn't just hoarding weapons. I was really thinking about how to contribute to an American industry. And again, it just shows how far off track we've gotten. This is where we are right now. But again, like you all, I think it's only for right now. Eventually, these people are going to have to obey the law. So I'll go on for a bit. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Told you he was a
I got
nerd.
a quick question from the chat for you, real quick, Dexter. CNT Designs and Arms asked in the chat, did you get to shoot any of the guns that you built?
No, I didn't. I wish I had. One of I think it's the second rifle I built. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Sorry?
No, keep going.
The second rifle I built is called, I named my rifles because I'm a nerd. That rifle is called Diana. And I built that for my daughter. Of course, named it after the Roman goddess of the hunt. And my idea was, to one day, take, ship all our guns up to New Hampshire, where I was going to build a gun lab, and I was going to take her out in the woods and teach her how to shoot. But no, I didn't get to fire any of my weapons.
Yeah. All right, Vass, you had a question that you had your hand up. You wanted to jump in on?
Yeah, Dexter. Obviously, we pointed out there have been multiple irregularities. There seem to be multiple violations. The First, Second, Fourth, Eighth Amendment have all been violated in the process, in this whole process. There seems to be no cause and to equate to or to start this domino of effects. So I think a lot of people would be asking, isn't there an appeal? Why hasn't there been an appeal? Is there going to be an appeal? Where do you stand with that?
Right. Very good question. Thank you for asking me. Our appeals process is more or less, goes hand in hand with our fundraising process. I can't make any plainer than that. So what has happened is we had a good amount of momentum in terms of publicity, PR and fundraising, before, while I was still outside and especially during my trial. But, and even when I went to Rikers, because of course, owning a firearm, right, is a violent felony. Right? And never having armed owning the weapon is a violent felony. So I couldn't get any deal of pending sentencing. Right? So I think as soon as the verdict was ready, I was covered off to Rikers. Okay. And while I was in Rikers, I still managed to keep in touch with a lot of people on my network and even record some interviews. Crystal knows about, my talks with Jeff Charles and Reverend Tim and people like that while I was in Rikers. But what happened is when I was moved from Rikers to the state system, there was this big period of kind of radio silence because one year at the university called in transit, so much of that time you can't make a phone call. You can't talk to anyone. No one knows where you are. And it's so a lot of the momentum that we had kind of ebbed away. So now we're trying to get that momentum back, trying to do more talks, more interviews, trying to get people's attention re-engaged with this thing. And so once we're hopeful that once that happens, once the momentum starts to build again, the fundraising will start to build again. Because of course, I've emptied my bank account. My parents have emptied theirs. We're pretty much entirely dependent on how much money we can raise with my Give Some Go campaign. So the next increment is really, where we are now, plus 50, because mostly we've expended the money we've raised to get to this point. Now, the next thing to kind of get our appeal drafted and get us off the docket in the lowest appeals court, that's going to be another, let's say, 40, 50K that we have to raise. So that's kind of where we are. Fortunately, right, again, we do seem to be, attention does seem to be picking up. I mean, I was really surprised when my lawyer called me and said, "Hey, I've got someone from CBS who wants to talk to you." I was like, "What?" And of course, that just aired. That interview just aired, like a couple nights ago, and then there are a couple other people from major kind of media concerns who've expressed interest. But I'd say, it's also, even in the 2A community, a lot of people still don't know about this case, right? So it's really great that Crystal has been just doing God's work, by going around to gun shows, wearing the T-shirt, and just talking to people. And so I've been, me and my producer, Texas, who's on with us right now, he's the one who's doing the three-way for us. And he and I have been kind of like running down that list of contacts, reaching out to people and saying, "Yeah, I am interested." And of course, I've forwarded those contacts to my lawyer as well. Saying, definitely reach out to these people, because if anyone wants to know the legal minutiae, they should definitely call my lawyer. And he's delighted to talk about the case. But of course, I mean, he's a working stiff. He's got to run a firm. And he can't. There's so much, free work he can do. So that's where we are. Is that we have to raise money to get this appeal written and to get us on the docket.
No, I can understand that now, but I should also ask, because a lot of people forget things when it comes to politics or cases, things that will affect their life, and the government is notorious for slow walking Second Amendment issues. If everyone watching were to make a donation, we get 50,000 people to put in $1 or whatever combination it is, and you get the money tomorrow, how long before you can make that appeal and possibly get to the Supreme Court? Do you have an idea of what kind of time frame that you have to be punished for?
I have no idea. I know that in terms of drafting the appeal and getting on the docket, that's more or less down to us. We don't have to wait for the government to do anything. How quickly that appeal moves through the system, I don't know. I don't even know all the driving factors that would influence how fast it moves. That would be a question for my lawyer. He would know much more. Where we can kind of pour more gas on and make things move faster, and where we just have to sit back and wait for the government to respond. And by the way, this is why it's not just. This is why, of course, the fundraising matters, but also just the visibility matters, the PR. I've said before that the Brooklyn DA said that he wanted to make an example of me, right? And you know something? I have decided that I want to help him. I want to help him, right? In other words, this man. I mean, come on, don't hide your light under a bushel. Think about it. When the highest court in the land said what it said about the constitutionality of gun laws, what did he say? And what did Letitia James say? What did Kathy Hochul say? And all her heads? What did they say? They said essentially, we don't care what the Supreme Court says, and we don't care what the Bill of Rights says. And that's what Eric Gonzalez said. I don't care what the highest court in the land says. I'm going to do what I want. This is a great man. This is a great man, and I want everyone to know about this. And I want everyone to remember. I want to jog people's memory and remind them that Mr. Eric Gonzalez and other people, in and around the government, right, who are so concerned about public safety, they have to remove me, a scourge on the community, from the streets. And yet, not that long ago, right, violent mobs were being allowed to run rampant in our city and do all kinds of damage. And even today, right, it's no longer the so-called summer of love, but everyone who lives in New York knows that New Yorkers, people who live in New York City are subjected to all kinds of crime and unpleasantness and nuisances and everything from, people stealing your catalytic converter to breaking into your house to rapes and robberies and this and that and the other. I want to remind people of this. Yeah. And I want Eric Gonzalez to stand up and say, yes, with all this, I think that someone who's never harmed anyone and never taken anyone's property, never made his neighbors fear for their safety, I think I want to make an example of him. I want his head on a pike. Like I said, I want to amplify this. I want to help the guy. So that's part of my mission is to help that and to make sure that I want them to take it to be talking about this. There's no reason why Democrats in New York should keep this great success to themselves and locking me up for 10 years. No, actually, all the way up to Kamala Harris. She should be talking about this. This is a great victory for public safety. To take a law-abiding citizen who's exercising his constitutional right and lock him up for 10 years. Congratulations. So let's all celebrate that by making everyone know about it. So,
absolutely.
I would also like to point out that, again, the ratification of the Civil Rights Bill of the New York State's Constitution was in 1909. So this is not just a violation of our federal rights, being enshrined in the federal Constitution. This is also New York State violating its own Constitution. New Yorkers need to understand, Albany does not care about you.
Correct.
They do not care about the Constitution that they hold for the state itself.
They don't care about their own laws.
No, they, as far as they're concerned, the New York State Constitution is malleable. It is selectively enforceable, and it's at the whim of whatever administration happens to be in power at the time, so long as it's authoritarian.
Yep. Period. Dexter.
And look, by the way, sorry, go
ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go on, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say that another thing I'd like to point out is that we all remember when not that long ago, right? All the lefties in charge, and really we have to say this is mostly Democrats in charge. I mean, I'm a politically homeless conservative, but this was really a Democrat thing.
Yeah.
All the Democrats in charge, especially in major cities like New York, we're at pains, right, to remind us, that there were murderous white supremacists everywhere, behind every rock and bush and tree, right, waiting to jump out and lynch me.
Yeah. Oh, I think we lost him.
Losing again.
Might have been a slight.
Are you still with us, Dexter? He might have timed out.
That's what I was thinking. He might have got timed out.
Yeah, because I think he was on for about 25 minutes before, and it's been about 25 minutes since he called back in.
I want to
call back.
iterate.
But to finish his point, though, what he's saying is that we've been told. I'm also Black. I'm just a little light skinned, but I'm also a Black woman. They've been telling us for the last several years that white supremacy is on the rise. It's the biggest threat to us as a people. Yet give us your guns because we can protect you, but white supremacy is on the rise. So somebody has to make it make sense. You can't tell us that there's a white supremacist behind every bush corner waiting to jump out to attack and hurt or do something to us, and then turn around and tell us, oh, well, we know all of these things, but here, give us your firearms, give us your means of protection, and we'll protect you. But then turn around and tell us that all the police are racist and the system is all racist and everything is all racist. But, don't worry, because we'll protect you. But, somebody has to make it make sense.
And then the very people that put you in prison.
Well,
That
Like,
part.
that's the kicker. Is like everything's racist. Everyone's out to get you. We'll protect you, but we'll also put you in prison.
and also if we look at New York State and in the whole bail reform, or we like to call it catch and release, I mean, they put that whole premise that it's all about due process and making sure that people that are incarcerated can get out and have a fair trial. So we're going to let them out until their trial happens. Yet they're doing stuff like this to Dexter.
Let's look at this judge's or this DA's record here for just a second. Okay, and this is from Reason Magazine. Pursuing Gonzalez's other recent wins is instructive. They include securing a 7-year sentence for a man who repeatedly sexually assaulted a young girl, a 3 to 9 year sentence for a man convicted of second-degree manslaughter, and a 3.5 year sentence for a woman who stole almost $1 million from 9 people.
That's it.
Yet there wasn't a single victim to Dexter Taylor's supposed crime.
Well, remember, Mike, there was during the 2020 BLM riots, 6,000 New Yorkers were absolved of rioting in the second degree, of arson and assault. We saw that's just in New York. That's just New York City. That's not New York State.
Right.
That's not the United States. That was just New York City. And that just kind of puts it into perspective. Oh, we have bail reform and we have criminal justice where we're looking at gangs of individuals from various countries that we've seen 11 individuals attacking 2 New York City police officers and released and then allowed to go to other states and to disappear throughout the country. This is not unusual, but yet here goes a law-abiding citizen who has no criminal history, no violence, no complaints, did everything legally, and they suddenly, without any provocation, decide not only are they going to persecute him, but they're going to make him an example, which I personally believe would mean that they're using Dexter as a way to say, shut up or else. That's how it makes me feel when we hear all the evidence and all the irregularities.
And meanwhile, here's you got Dexter, who, like you said, law-abiding citizen, not a blip on his criminal record for anything at all. 30 years, at the same place, living in the same neighborhood, doing the same thing, secure family, the whole thing. They send him to Coxsackie, to a maximum security facility in upstate New York, when 5 miles from the guy's house is Queensboro, a minimum security facility. This guy's not this guy's not John Dillinger, not Al Capone. He's not a gang member.
And the thing that pisses me off is Dexter has a 16-year-old daughter, or at least
at
the time. I mean,
where's the crying about family separation?
Absolutely. And how's that going to affect family? It's ridiculous.
They don't care.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
So instead, okay, you want to incarcerate the man while he's waiting for his appeals to come through. Okay, fine. He's got a 16-year-old daughter. Why do you put him in a facility 160 miles away from where his daughter lives?
And parents that are well into their 80s.
Yeah.
So
nobody can get up there to see the guy. The poor guy's up there, all the way up there for no reason. You can't facilitate him locally. They can facilitate COVID patients in retirement homes and kill half of the retirement community in New York City during COVID, but they can't put Dexter in a minimum to light security facility closer to his family.
Mind you, Frank,
mind you, go ahead.
That according to New York State, Dexter Taylor is a violent felon.
Yeah, but remember, he doesn't have the same kind of friends that, say, Jussie Smollett has. Remember, the national embarrassment and all the friends that Jussie Smollett came in to pull out a hoax. And after being Jussie Smollett, Chicago, falsely claimed, for those who may not remember, falsely claimed that he was attacked by individuals based on his race and his political identification. And what in fact did turn out is he lied. He was using all of that to get a better contract because he was an actor in a TV show.
Yeah.
And ultimately, at the end of that day, what happened? Jussie Smollett said he couldn't stay in prison, and his friends got him out. He was released after being convicted. He was released.
I think we got quarterback. I think we got him back on the line now.
Yes, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Dexter, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. We got that little thing cleared up.
Excellent. Yes. Sorry, I heard there was something weird going on, but anyway, I did hear Crystal's comment, and it can't be improved upon, except to say that the flip side of that contradiction, right? That we have these leftist politicians telling us that everything is racist and everything is terrible and everyone's trying to kill us, but they want to disarm us. Is that the people, people who've been the so-called anti-racists and the people who are always talking about black civil rights seem to have a blind spot when it comes to one civil right in particular, and I find that fascinating. I mean, there are people who will they go out to kind of wax poetic, right, about Harriet Tubman, but they forget that Harriet Tubman was packing. You see?
Yeah, right.
And there are people who are glad to wax poetic about our civil rights. It's like the whole point of the civil rights movement was it was appealing to a value higher than whatever law they scribbled in the state house of a particular Jim Crow state. You see, and so that I think we can't emphasize that too much. That we need a rethink. How we think of things in this country. And certainly the people who claim to be interested in civil rights, who claim to be on the side of Black Americans, need to understand that if you say you're on the side of Black Americans and you're not in favor of the Second Amendment, then you're not for real.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I don't really plan a way to say that.
Absolutely.
Right? And in my interview with PBS, I said, something similar is that, look, I'm a whole citizen. I'm not a 3/5 citizen. I'm a whole United States citizen. And I insist on claiming all the rights of a United States citizen. And better people than I, experienced all kinds of unpleasantness and all kinds of hardships and all kinds of violence, up to and including being killed outright. Yeah, so that I can walk around this country like a citizen.
Yeah.
And so saying, well, you should just know that in New York they wrote that won't do. That will not do. Right? Citizen, words mean things. and citizen means that I have the rights of a citizen, and the Constitution does apply in all 50 states. So I'll pause there, but that's very much where we are.
You're a citizen, not a subject. That's the point. We forget that as citizens, we are not subjects. The government is subject to us, not the other way around. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I admire your fight.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
I admire your fight.
One of the reasons why the Bill of Rights was established was literally, and that's also one of the reasons why we are a republic and not a democracy, is because of tyranny by majority.
Mm-hmm.
Or tyranny of majority. And that is literally what New York State is trying to live off of now, is tyranny by majority. And these egregious violations of individual rights is proof of that. The violation of your rights, Dexter. And then you've got the same prosecutor who's working out deals and letting people off with 3 months. What was it? A 3.5 year to 7 year sentence for stealing $1 million, a 3 to 9 year sentence for second degree manslaughter, a 7 year sentence for a man who repeatedly sexually assaulted a young girl. Okay. And you're more of a threat than those people are.
I think there's a good book that describes.
Not to mention, by the way,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when good's called evil and evil's called good,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's I'd like to get my hands on that one. I was going to say, not to forget, in terms of people who had unusually light sentences. There was, I believe this is in 2020, the so-called Summer of Love. There were two people who were arrested and charged for tossing a lit Molotov cocktail into a parked police unit, and they got a year apiece. I thought that was interesting.
And Molotov cocktails are
That case
Yeah,
was, that was in Philadelphia. 2 lawyers did that.
This was in
Dexter.
Philadelphia or New York? I thought this
Yes,
was in New York.
it was Philadelphia, and 2 lawyers did that.
Wow.
Dexter, have any of, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a lag on this line. I was just going to say that someone mentioned bail reform a while ago, and I'd just like to point out that my bail was almost $250,000.
Wow.
So, to put things in perspective.
That's insane.
Dexter, has any of the Second Amendment organizations reached out to you, or are they helping you in any way?
Good question. National Association for Gun Rights, shout out to Chris Cooper, by the way, was the first two-way organization to reach out. They actually made me a lifetime member after I was indicted, which I thought was pretty awesome. And so they've had me a microphone. They've hosted social media spaces, people to spread awareness about my case. The Firearms Policy Coalition has also reached out. And I don't think I've heard from GOA yet, but they've all definitely kind of given moral support. And again, NAGR is the organization that actually has helped me, has given material help in terms of getting the word out, right? They're passing me a microphone and letting me talk about this case. And I've been, me and my producer have been talking about, have been in contact with Chris Cooper, trying to get something scheduled so I can have a follow-up talk with him. My contract, I have not heard anything from the NRA, which of course shouldn't really surprise anyone.
No.
But yeah, I haven't heard anything from them. In terms of conservative organizations generally, I mean, the record is mixed. It's interesting to me that CBS sent a news crew up here to talk to me about my case, and I have not heard anything from Fox News. Again, I'm not surprised. I just like to point out ironies like that.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what's going on.
And Lawrence Jones is the only person on Fox News that I've heard even mention your name.
Wow.
So
That's not good. I'm going to get up with Crystal and try to get your lawyer's name. I got some ideas that I want to pass on to your lawyer, where we may be able to kind of escalate some of the things that will end up benefiting you. So I will get up with Crystal, get your lawyer's name, and have a couple of discussions with him.
at least on Twitter,
I'm completely delighted. Yes.
I wanted to let you know, Dexter, that at least on X, on Twitter, there are several 2A accounts that are very prolific that have been continuously repeating your story. One of them is You Are a Smartass, Carl. He's the biggest one that keeps putting it out over and over. And it's been picked up by Joe Banalock and Carrie Sloan, and there's many others of us that continuously put it in front of people's timelines on X, at least. And I've seen it come up many times. So you do have support. It's just at the moment, it doesn't seem like any of the big names like GOA or FPC that currently have cases in New York fighting the New York gun laws have even seen your story. They probably are aware of it, but I don't know why they haven't reached out yet.
FPC has posted a few things, and they have been in contact with Dexter.
Yeah.
So outside of them and National Gun Rights are the only two organizations that have officially said anything. And then, like I was saying earlier, Dana Lash had Dexter on prior to his conviction, and then she's reposted a few times and things. So Carl's a mutual friend. We're all in that same friend group. So, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I like him a lot.
He's a good guy. I love Carl.
Yeah. So he doesn't let people forget you.
He
doesn't let people forget you.
I've heard, because when I talk to my mom, she says, this guy Carl is really, he's really on the case. And, other people say, like, Carl's on it all the time. I mean,
we're always posting and reposting each other's stuff, and that's kind of how we work that out.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, I don't want to. I'm glad you mentioned this, because I don't want just because the big names and the big microphones have kind of seem to have ignored the case. I don't want to give the impression that I don't have an amazing network of people. I do. And it's all the more amazing for being a grassroots network, for being people who are not necessarily kind of, doing this kind of thing for a living. They just care about it, And so I just every day I wake up and I'm so grateful for my network of people, for all these people, for Crystal going around the gun shows with a T-shirt on, with my likeness on it, and so I can't believe what's happening. It's like, wait a minute, she's sitting next to so and so. What is it? I know that guy. I used to watch that guy's podcast. Just amazing. My network of people is really top notch. So,
Crystal's a huge advocate for you. That's literally how I found out, or how we ended up getting in touch. We actually did an episode, what's it been, about 4 weeks ago, I think it was, where we talked about your case.
Oh, yeah.
On it.
Wow.
Actually, we've done it twice. We've talked about it twice.
Thank you.
So,
thank you very much, gentlemen.
Definitely a big shout out to Dick Heller for that, because he got me the invite to IB 8088 Ranger. Him and Christy have been amazing.
Oh, wow.
Dick's a great guy.
Dick Heller's been working behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it was Crystal who approached Dick Heller in the first place. I mean, Crystal is why he knows about it.
I got that man's personal number. Like, I have his home phone number, his cell phone number. We communicate all the time. He's awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, look, these kinds of things, that's the thing, that there's two ways to go about this, right? One way is with the big names and the big personalities. And the other way is this way, with grassroots support. And I'm fine with either one. But it's just, I'm just amazed. Sometimes it's just surreal to me that it's happening. That all these people are taking an interest. And again, it's humbling and it's gratifying. And every now and then, if I start to feel a little bit low, I just remember that I have top-notch people out there making noise about this. And so, I'm good to go. I'm fully uppity,
Good.
And I think that's the thing that's what we've got to do, especially after this election, after some of this, the background noise dies down. We're ready to take the fight to beat the enemy of liberty.
Well, we have
it's an important fight.
Well, we have to do what we can to turn advocacy into action, because everybody can be sympathetic, but as long as everyone's sitting on the hands, it's not going to get done. It's going to take the fight to them that makes the difference. Dallas Grimm's got a question for you, Dex.
So one of the things that I imagine is that it's not just about the guns you built, it's what kind of guns you built that made New York State and the ATF take notice. Now, in your opinion, if there was somebody working, say, in black powder, right, and they were ordering materials for like a home build kit for a flintlock or percussion cap heritage firearm, because that's what they're classified as, is a heritage firearm. That's still gunsmithing. And in the state of New York, do you think that if New York is successful in your case, would that too, under heritage firearms, be taken off the table? People that engage in that activity, they would also be a target?
That's a good question. I mean, look, I think it's pretty clear that the people, we don't have to guess. The people in charge have said that everything is fair game because there is no limiting principle to what they're doing, to their violations of law, right?
Right.
They refuse to be limited. Thus far, they refuse to be limited by the Bruen decision. They refuse to be limited by what the founding documents actually say. And as someone pointed out before, they refuse to be limited by even what the New York State Constitution. In terms of what might they come after next, my answer would be anything. Yep. Absolutely anything they could come after next. Because again, there is no, they don't think that like words mean things, and that like, once there's a document and a body of law, you have to follow that body of law. No, they think, well, we have an idea, and so we're going to do what we have to do to kind of implement that idea, and to hell with what the law says, except when we want the law to work for us. That's clearly their philosophy. I'm not guessing. They've acted it out. They said it. So that's the answer. Are black powder arms going to be fair game for them? Sure, everything is fair game for them. And by the way, I just want to point out that, for people who say, well, it's guns, and you hear this is a common and sort of rather silly slogan on the anti-Second Amendment left. It's the guns. It's the guns. Well, so here's the question. If it's the guns, then how come brass knuckles are illegal in New York?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if firearms pose this special danger because they are ranged weapons, right? Mm-hmm. And they operate at a distance. Well, the range of brass knuckles is effectively the length of your arm, right? So why are brass knuckles illegal?
Well,
why is mace illegal? Why are swords illegal? Why are weapons of a certain length illegal? In other words, we're dealing with people who have a fundamental problem with the idea of self-defense.
Absolutely.
And especially armed self-defense. And why? Because a scared and defenseless population must rely entirely on the government. Yep. And people who are that reliant are that is the ultimate justification for a bureaucracy. The bureaucracy can justify itself and say, well, they need us because they're defenseless without us. The moment we are actually allowed to defend our homes and our properties and our families and our lives, then that's the moment we start to realize, well, hang on a second. What are we actually paying these people all this money? Mm-hmm. What's really going on here, right? So that's kind of the long answer. I'm sorry, but that's my answer.
No, that's fine. No, it's good to hear, because we have to realize that the authoritarians are not going to stop with just a certain type of thing. They're going to be able to broadly define it over many things, and anything that they can construe as a threat to their power. But you're a smart man. It's not just what you were describing about barrel resonance and the different aspects of gunsmithing that probably many people have tackled but really haven't come up with a solution for. You came up with solutions. So it isn't just that you're making things in your home. It's that you're creating solutions for problems that make those things better. And you are more of a threat than the average gun owner because you know how to make things better. That's the biggest problem that they have, is that's why the idea that my son, for example, wants to do gunsmithing, I'm like, not here. Don't do it in New York State, because at the current level, if you were to do it here, you would wind up just like Dexter Taylor. And he was like, who? And I'm like, let me show you. And he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, this is how far the government will go to suppress your liberty. And he's not of age yet. He's almost 18, but he's like, he's wanting to go. He wants to go serve in the Marines, and he wants to be a soldier. And I'm like, if you do this, you have to understand who you're signing up with. And right now, the government that's in charge is not going to protect you or treat you decently. They're not going to see you as a valuable
That
piece
is
of
correct.
equipment. They're going to see you as a threat, as an existential threat. And then they're going to give you training on top of it to make you an existential threat. And then when you cease to be useful, they will ditch you.
1000%.
So be
That's
careful,
correct.
you know, and if you want to go pursue, you know, manufacture of things, or you want to practice weapons science, not here, not now, maybe later, once your
That's right.
case is settled
That's
and won,
right.
right? Once your case is all won,
That's right.
and
But
we
not
fought
now.
for liberty, but not
Yeah.
now. Yep.
That's right.
To real
And
quick
that's
to your
really a shame. I mean, if you think it, sorry, go on. I'm very sorry. Go on.
No, Dexter, I was just going to say to your point too, they banned nunchucks in New York State back in the 70s because they were worried that Bruce Lee was going to make them famous and people would rob banks with nunchucks. And they just recently, under Cuomo, made them legal again. So, like, you're spot on with the metal knuckles and plastic knuckles, the 10 deadly weapons that New York State has in the penal code.
Yeah.
Right, right. It's like so. So when we hear people say, because you know, when I was in the run up to my imprisonment, of course we were having these debates online, and then you see these people, these hysterical anti-gunners. It's the guns, obviously stupid. It's the guns. And, you know, they think they've scored a point by either being rude to someone who cares about Second Amendment. It's like, well, no, it's not the guns. Obviously not. And the fact is that any part, you know, expanding on the previous question about whether black powder arms are for grabs, you know, you see that everything is up for grabs. Everything is up when there's no limiting principle. You know, those people who know my content know that I'm a big fan of G.K. Chesterton. And one of the things he said, which I thought was very interesting, is that if you let a law go, if you let go of a law, if you let it, you know, you send it out there, it's like letting go of a dog or a horse. It will follow its own nature, not yours.
Mm-hmm.
It will do what it wants to do. And the special thing we all, and of course all of us here know it, but I just want to remind people listening that one very special thing we have that we shouldn't take for granted is the fact that we have a body of law, right, enshrined in a single document that limits government. You know, most laws limit what citizens can do, right? We have the Bill of Rights that limits what the state can do. And this is vital because there must be a limiting principle. There must be something where saying, no, you can't do that. So, this is what we're up against. And look, I think the good news is that people who really get to hear the argument, hear our arguments. People, if they're arguing in good faith, they understand where we're coming from, even if they're not gun enthusiasts like I am or like you all are. You know, they understand where we're coming from. So what we have to do is just continue to spread the word. I wanted to. I know I've been going on for a bit, but I wanted to bring this in because I think this may have been edited out of the CBS interview, the segment that showed on TV the other night. Is, you know, a lot of people, the one to hear about my case, what they say is, well, you know, making guns is fine, but they were untraceable because they didn't have serial numbers. And I just want anyone who's listening who may not be, you know, up on this stuff like we are, to understand that is basically anti-Second Amendment propaganda. It's very simple. A serial number on a weapon is designed to track a certain series of events in the history of that weapon, the life of that weapon. Those events are legitimate purchases or legitimate transfers. So now, hopefully no one is silly enough to think that people who are running around robbing their fellow citizens or doing home invasions, right, or shooting people down in the street, hopefully no one thinks that those guys are actually purchasing weapons legitimately and then going out and committing crimes with those same weapons. So the idea that an unserialized weapon is somehow magically untraceable, that's nonsense. Because the fact is, weapons on the street, weapons used to commit crimes, have usually been stolen. And in any case, when a crime is committed with a weapon, the police have to show up and do police work. They don't just get to look. First of all, if the weapon, they can't recover the weapon, the serial number is useless. That's the first thing. right? And the second thing is, no one says this, of course, about knives.
Right.
No one says that, when someone is stabbed to death with a knife, no one says, oh, now the cops won't be able to investigate this homicide because the knife didn't have a forge marking or a serial number. That's ridiculous. So the idea that serial numbers the lack of a serial number makes all police work futile is nonsense. Cops who know their business and who know how to work the streets and work homicides like they always work homicides. If the weapon is there, they can recover it, and they can figure out what happened. They can canvass the scene and talk to witnesses and this and that and does and so, and do police work, as we used to call it in living memory. So I'll pause there.
Quick follow-up on serial numbers. Serial numbers were not required by the government until 1968, and they were put into the Gun Control Act of 1968. And that's when serial numbers were required to be put on by gun manufacturers.
Corporate gun manufacturers, right?
Yes.
Let me follow up with that. The FBI in its Crime in the USA report, as well as several other reports, using this for red flag laws and other data for the government, do not track ghost guns. And the answer from the FBI is there are so few cases, it's not worth tracking. This comes from the FBI directors. Right. I believe Director Ray was the one who said that in this case. They've said it several times. They have every category of gun, the types of guns that commit crimes, the various types of guns types of guns that are used in various types of crimes, not ghost guns, because it's not an issue. It's political, but it's not a real crime issue. It's just something they use as an excuse.
Well, having built several firearms myself, I can tell you quite honestly, and I'm sure Dexter will probably agree with me, if I wanted to use a firearm for nefarious purposes and get a gun that was untraceable, it would be easier to go out and buy one in the street than it is to actually build one in your house.
Yeah. I'm very glad you said that. But yes, exactly. With the guys who want to get out there and rip and run or rob people at gunpoint or whatever are not going to tool up a machine shop like I had in my basement, okay, to finish 8% receivers and go out. No, it doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, we all know, because we all have eyes and ears and can understand what's happening around us, that the people who want to get guns and shoot up the place are getting guns and shooting up the place. Yeah. And they have been before so-called ghost guns, what I call traditional guns, because that's what they really are. They're traditional firearms manufactured in traditional way, which is in American homes, right? But people who have wanted to acquire firearms have been able to do that with no problem. No problem.
Well,
so, I am not, people say, well, there's a problem in the streets, and yes, but I am not your problem.
Yeah.
What I am is easy prey, right? Because, it can go to someone like me, and for those of you who saw the video of my arrest, you know that I was all professional. I was very polite, courteous to the police officers. It's easy to come after law-abiding citizens. Going after the people who are actually running around.
You have 1 minute left.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Dexter.
I just got the 1 minute warning, so I can call you back in. But go on.
You got your 1 minute warning, and we're actually at our 2 minute warning. We're almost ready to end the show. It's almost 9 o'clock here in where we are. So, Dexter, real quick, give us a closing sentiment.
Yeah, well, the closing sentiment is that we have to fight these. We have to fight the enemies of liberty everywhere.
Yes.
Or
anywhere. And that's it.
Right. Amen. Dexter, we're all on your side. We're going to do what we can do. Expect a whole bunch of information coming your way about people who are going to want to talk to you and help get your story out.
Absolutely.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you. Thank you all for doing this. This is fantastic.
All right, Dexter, that's what we're here for.
God bless you, Crystal.
Love you, brother.
All right. Take care.
I'll go have a pineapple pizza for you.
Awesome.
Thank you for using security. Goodbye.
And there goes Dexter.
I talk to him next, Crystal. Tell him thank you very, very much for all of us.
Please.
We do appreciate him being on. It was great having him on. Also, I need to get in touch with you sometime so I can try to get a hold of his lawyer, because I think I've got some strategies that could be very beneficial for Dexter.
I'm gonna do it, and I'll make sure I get the official contact information for Manu.
Like I say, this was not the first jailhouse conversation I've had over the phone, but it's probably the one with the smartest resident.
The man's a genius. The man's a genius.
And listen, when he gets out after the civil lawsuits are done for all of his incarceration troubles, we guarantee we're going to be able to get Dexter himself a really good job somewhere in the 2A community. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, it's 9:00. This has been a special edition of the Weekly Roundtable. Crystal, thank you so much for coming on tonight and helping us get Dexter's story out there. Dexter, you can't hear us now, but we love you. We're thinking about you, and thank you for coming on. We're in here for the good fight. Matt Mallory from Meet the Pressers, thanks for coming in and helping us get the word out. Charlie Cook, as always, thank you for coming by. Dan Wass, even though you left a little early, we appreciate you being here, and we know you're going to help us out too. Dal Grimm, thank you for joining us. Mike Marshall, myself, Mike Vasquez, we all say thank you. God bless. Make sure you follow the links for Dexter Taylor. Chip in. Let's get this man some help. And we're going to also find out about his commissary, because maybe we can get him a little bit of extra ice cream or something, or some sort of dessert to be served in that place.
A pizza with pineapple on it.
Yes.
No. I like the pineapple pizza.
Well,
he calls me a degenerate, and I am corrupting the youth of America.
Yes.
Crystal, you're wrong.
No, she's correct.
As an Italian, you're wrong.
Yeah, I know.
No pineapple on the pizza.
Pineapple all the way.
No,
the
Irish guy at the bottom of the screen telling me about.
So when I message him, it's like, hey, from your favorite degenerate, and I call him Lego Man, so he's Lego Man, and.
All right, we're gonna put a poll up. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yes, it does. It's delicious. I don't understand why we're supposed to be freedom people. Why don't you like freedom? I don't.
Fair.
Gun owners is on your side.
Yeah, pineapple and ham is the best. Where are my Guinea buddies? Where's the rest of my Italian friends over here? Listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week. God bless. We love you guys, and as always, you guys be safe and shoot straight. We'll catch you next week, same time, same channel, and we'll hopefully have a little bit more information on how you guys can help Dexter out. All right, so everybody have a great night. Thank you so much.
Live free, fight well, liberty first.
Absolutely.
Damn right.